I have a 6GB Ampere RTX A2000 and a Ryzen 5 5600X on a B450 platform. Can it handle Doom: The Dark Ages? Let's find out. At 1080p resolution with low quality preset and no DLSS, the workstation GPU managed to put 30 FPS on average, 24 FPS for 1% lows and 22 for 0.1% lows. That was not ideal to play Doom, and I would say I was not enjoying the gameplay. This game really needs more FPS because of the action it has. Okay, native was too much for this GPU. But what about DLSS? Well, that definitely helped and pushed the average frame rate to 56 FPS, which was an impressive 87% increase. And not that the game looked worse. Honestly, I could not tell the difference. In the visuals, I mean, the difference in the frame rate was quite noticeable. DLSS helped a lot with the frame rates, but still I was below 60 FPS, so I was wondering if lowering the resolution would also help. And it did! At 720p without DLSS, the GPU made 68 FPS on average, 58 for 1% lows and 51 for 0.1% lows. Now that was a frame rate suitable for Doom. Obviously the game looked worse at this resolution, but actually it was not as bad as I was expecting. But more on that a bit later in the video. Last but not least, DLSS quality at 720p. In terms of frame rate, as expected, best results. 86 FPS on average, 73 for 1% lows and 67 for 0.1% lows. That was a 26% increase compared to native 720p and 186% compared to 1080p without DLSS. Similar to Full HD, at 720p DLSS quality didn't introduce graphical issues that I could easily see. A side-by-side comparison coming a bit later in the video. Comparing all tested settings, we can see that at 1080p DLSS quality gave 87% more average FPS, 720p introduced 21% more, and turning on DLSS on that resolution resulted in another 26% increase. The threshold of 60 FPS was nearly reached with DLSS at 1080p and surpassed at 720p. A bumpy start, but with the help of upscaling or a manual change of the resolution, things turn out to be pretty good, at least in terms of frame rate. In terms of visual qualities, things did not look bad either. Low settings didn't make the game look ugly by any means, at least in my mind. At 1080p DLSS also did not introduce any graphical problems that I could lay my finger on. Here is the side-by-side comparison. Honestly, I can't tell the visual difference. Let me know if you can. The same goes for native versus DLSS at 720p. Looks pretty similar to me. Of course, there was a difference between 720 and 1080p, but I'm willing to say that I would enjoy the benefit of the higher frame rate that comes with the lower resolution more compared to the visual qualities that come with the higher resolution, at least when we are comparing 30 to 60 FPS. RTX A2000 6GB was never meant to be a gaming GPU. Yet, it has an unbeatable charm with the lack of supplemental power and the incredibly small form factor. In my pretty dated system at this point, it didn't exactly impress out of the box in the latest Doom game. Even at the lowest graphical preset, at 1080p the GPU didn't manage to pass 30 FPS on average, which I dare to say is not enough to enjoy this game. However, If an upscaling was used, the things did look different. Well, rather the frames were different, the image quality was pretty similar. Then the FPS was pretty close to 60 FPS, which was a whole new story. And if the resolution was decreased to 720p, the frames went beyond 60 FPS threshold with, in my mind, not unacceptable visual price. So could I play Doom the Dark Ages with RTX A2000 6GB GPU? Yes, I could, if I used low settings and if I used DLSS or I switched to 720p resolution. That was it for this video, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Happy gaming!